Stan Lee was an inspiration to the comic book industry and played a pivotal role in the golden age of comics. He created characters with a sense of humanity who dealt with real-world issues such as drug abuse and discrimination. This allowed people to connect with him more than they could with other characters of their time.
Stanley Martin Lieber was born on December 28, 1922 in New York City, son of Jack and Celia Lieber, who immigrated from Romania. He spent his childhood during the Great Depression and experienced tough times. His comic book career didn't really take off until the early 1960s, when he helped create what is now known as Marvel Comics.
Stanley Lieber became an assistant at Timely Comics, which would eventually become Marvel in 1939. Lieber's childhood ambition to become a writer finally became true when he wrote Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge and Captain America Comics #3. This comic introduced Captain America's trademark ricocheting shield toss, which immediately became an instant classic in the comic book world.
He used the name Stan Lee for this particular comic, and years later he made it his legal name. He explained in an autobiography that he had intended to save his given name for more literary work. Joe Simon and his creative partner Jack Kirby left late in 1941, following a dispute with publisher Martin Goodman. Goodman then put Lee, just under 19 years old, in charge as interim editor. Young Lee showed a knack for the business that led him to remain as the comic book division's editor-in-chief, as well as art director until 1972, when he would succeed Goodman as publisher.
In the late 1950s, DC Comics created a new team of superheroes that appealed to many people called the Justice League of America. DC Comics, at this time, was the equivalent of the big Hollywood studios. The major success of the Justice League caused the people of Timely Comics to panic a little. In response to DC's creation, Lee was tasked with making a new team of superheroes similar to the Justice League.
Stan Lee gave his superheroes a flawed humanity, which was a major change from what people were used to seeing in comics at this time. Before Lee's superheroes, most were seen as perfect human beings that had no problems whatsoever. Lee introduced complex, down-to-earth characters which could have bad tempers, fits of sorrow, or vanity. They tended to bicker amongst themselves, worried about paying their bills and impressing their girlfriend. They had a lot more emotion: boredom, anger, sadness, happiness. They could even be physically ill, which had never been seen before. Compared to Stan Lee's comics, everything else must have been quite boring.
No, bad call. He loves his hammer.
You want me to put the hammer down? Are we done here?
Before, comic books were traditionally for younger children. These changes in the characters' personalities ushered in a different, older audience. Obviously, this helped these characters grow in popularity, which helped Marvel Comics gain an advantage over their rival DC.
The first group of superheroes that Lee was a part of creating was the Fantastic Four. Along with Jack Kirby, the team's immediate success led to the creation of many more superheroes in the years to come. This includes superheroes such as the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, X-Men, Daredevil, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man. All of these newly created characters are all a part of the Avengers and live in the same sort of universe together.
Throughout the 1960s, Stan Lee scripted, art directed, and edited most of Marvel's series. With so many people demanding Lee's comics, he had to think of a way to keep up. Lee thought of something which he ended up calling the Marvel Method. It was actually quite a simple idea. Lee would brainstorm a story with an artist and then would prepare a brief synopsis rather than a complete script. Based on this synopsis, the artist would fill the pages by determining and drawing the panel-to-panel storytelling. After the artist turned in penciled pages, Lee would write the captions and then oversee the lettering and coloring. Because of this method, Lee was able to produce hundreds of comics and keep up with the reader's demand.
Lee's stories began to address real-life issues. He addressed things such as the Vietnam War, political elections, and student activism. In 1967, Lee introduced Robbie Robinson in the Amazing Spider-Man comic. This character was one of the first African Americans to play a major supporting role in comics. In 1969, Lee introduced the character Falcon in a Captain America comic. Falcon was Marvel's first leading African American superhero. Lee discovered that his stories had grown significantly in popularity on college campuses. Comics historian Les Daniels said, The mystical and metaphysical elements that took over the saga were perfectly suited to the tastes of young readers in the 1960s. Lee also supported using comic books to provide some measure of social commentary about the real world, often dealing with racism and injustice. In 1972, Lee stopped writing his monthly comic books to take the role of publisher. Lee became the public face of Marvel Comics.
In 1981, Lee moved to Hollywood to develop Marvel's TV and movie properties. Every now and then, Lee would return to the world of writing comics. For a brief period, he even became president of Marvel. However, he quickly stepped down to reprise his role as publisher, for he found that president was too much about numbers and finance and not enough about the creative process that he loved more than anything. In 2006, Marvel celebrated Lee's 65 years with the company by publishing a series of one-shot comics starring Lee himself meeting and interacting with many of his creations. These included Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, The Thing, Silver Surfer, and Doctor Doom. Lee has made a cameo appearance in every Marvel movie that has ever been released. Lee has been recognized for his accomplishments worldwide. He is his own star in Hollywood and was presented the National Medal of Arts by President George W. Bush.
Stan Lee's superheroes have had numerous movies, TV shows, and comics created about them. His characters are a part of some of the highest-grossing film franchises of all time, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and X-Men, which together have grossed over $14 billion. His legacy is still growing with over 21 new movies about the characters he created coming out in the next 5 years.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
I cannot help you if you're going to start all of this again.
There is nothing except this. I just finally know what I have to do.
These movies are some of the most anticipated films of the coming years. Their success has also inspired other studios to start their own multi-hero franchises, such as Warner Brothers' Justice League, as well as Fox's X-Men and Fantastic Four.
What made to you so special?
Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn.
These characters continue to be the most popular among comic book readers.
Think you're the only superhero in the world? You become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet. It was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people. See if they could work together to fight the battles that we never could.
How desperate are you? You call on such lost creatures to defend you.
There is no version of this where you come out on top. I have an army. We have a hope.
Stan Lee changed the way that superheroes were portrayed, from perfect ideal beings to people who each had their unique flaws which defined their character.
Start with something pure, something exciting. Then come the mistakes, the compromises.
For the first time, people could really connect with characters that seemed very different at first glance.
The brutality, the sacrifice, it changes you. I'd rather be a good man than a great king.
The price of freedom is high. And it's a price I'm willing to pay. You can take away my house, all my tricks and toys. But I am Iron Man.
Lee has influenced a large part of our culture and everyday lives. His characters are talked about and known by people all over the world.
Yes, the world is a vulnerable place. And yes, we help make it that way. But you need us. You know why?
Do enlighten us.
Because we're also the ones best qualified to defend it.
Stan Lee has defined entertainment for the world since the golden age of comic books, and will continue to for future generations. His work as a leader in the industry changed the way we think about our heroes, and his stories will be remembered for a long time to come.